businessman bans his son from talking to the nanny. Then he does something brilliant. Michael Thompson came home that Thursday afternoon with his heart already heavy from the endless meetings at the construction company he'd inherited from his father. What he didn't expect was to walk into a scene that would make him take a decision completely changing everyone's life in the house. It was when he heard that melody coming from his son's room. The nanny's soft voice was singing the same words his late wife Emily used to sing to lull Ethan to sleep every night. The 7-year-old boy was hugging Olivia, the 23-year-old who had been caring for him for nearly 2 years, and they were singing "The Wheels on the Bus" together with the same tenderness Emily had. Michael felt his chest tighten. It wasn't just jealousy. It was an old pain rushing back in full force, as if Emily were being replaced right before his eyes. Without a second thought, he climbed the marble stairs of their Bel Air mansion and forcefully opened the bedroom door. "Olivia, I need to speak with you. Now." Ethan was startled by his father's stern tone and hid behind the nanny. Olivia quickly stood up, smoothing the light blue uniform she always wore. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. Did something happen?" "Downstairs. Ethan, you stay here." The boy watched the two adults leave and sensed something was wrong. He crept down the stairs slowly and hid behind the living room door, where he could hear the conversation. "Olivia, I can't allow you to keep working here anymore," Michael said, avoiding her gaze. "Mr. Thompson, did I do something wrong? Ethan's been behaving well at school, eating properly, sleeping on time. It's not about your work, it's about other things. I'll pay your severance and an extra month's salary. You can collect your things tomorrow when Ethan's at school." Olivia's legs trembled. That job wasn't just income. It was her only way to help her mother, Margaret, who was undergoing cancer treatment at Mercy Medical Center. It was also her chance to study education at night at a private university in Pasadena. "But Mr. Thompson, I need to understand what happened. Ethan is like a son to me. That's exactly why," Michael interrupted, his voice harsher than intended. "You're not his mother, and you never will be." Ethan heard those words and felt his world collapse. He ran to his room and threw himself on the bed, crying so hard he soaked the dinosaur pillow Olivia had given him for his 7th birthday. Olivia left the house with tears in her eyes, unable to say goodbye to the boy she'd cared for so lovingly. She lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale, Pasadena, sharing the space with her mother, Margaret, and her younger sister, Emma, 15. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, planning something even he didn't fully understand. He just knew he couldn't let Olivia leave his life like that, without an explanation, without a goodbye. The next morning, as his father got ready for another day at the office, Ethan had his first brilliant idea. He grabbed his crayons and started drawing on a sheet of paper. He drew himself and Olivia at the park playing tag. In his wobbly child's handwriting, he wrote, "Olivia, I love you, Ethan." When Michael left for work, Ethan rushed downstairs to the kitchen, where Margaret, the new housekeeper his father had hastily hired, was making breakfast. "Mrs. Wilson, can you help me with something really important?" The 52-year-old woman, her graying hair tied in a bun, looked at the boy warmly. She'd lost her own son in a work accident 3 years earlier and felt a special connection with Ethan. "What do you need, sweetheart?" "I need you to give this to Olivia when she comes to pick up her things." Margaret looked at the drawing and felt her heart tighten. She knew Olivia from the neighborhood where they both lived and knew the young woman was someone special. "All right, dear, I'll give it to her." When Olivia arrived that afternoon to collect her belongings, Michael had instructed Margaret not to let her go up to Ethan's room. The young woman quickly gathered her things, trying not to cry in front of the new employee. Margaret, however, had her own idea. As she handed her Ethan's drawing, she whispered, "Olivia, that boy is hurting so much. If you'd like to leave something for him, I promise I'll give it to him." Olivia looked at the drawing and couldn't hold back her tears. That same night, she spent hours making colorful paper origami, birds, flowers, stars. On each one, she wrote a heartfelt message for Ethan. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The next day, Olivia returned to the house at dawn and hid the origami in the garden near Ethan's bedroom window. The boy woke up early, as he always did on Saturdays, and ran outside to play. That's when he saw the little colorful paper bird scattered across the grass. He carefully opened the first origami and read, "Ethan, you're the most special boy I know. Never forget that. Olivia." The second one said, "Always be as brave as you are. The world needs people like you." Ethan gathered all the origami and rushed upstairs to his room. He hid them in a shoebox under his bed, alongside other childhood treasures. But it wasn't enough. He needed to talk to Olivia, needed her to know she couldn't just disappear from his life. During breakfast, Ethan watched his father eat in silence, as he always did on weekends ever since his mother Emily had left a year and a half ago. Michael read the newspapers and answered emails on his phone, avoiding any deeper conversation with his son. "Dad, why did Olivia leave?" Michael glanced up from the paper for a second before returning to it. "Because I decided we didn't need her anymore. Margaret will take care of you now." "But Margaret doesn't know the songs I like. She doesn't know the stories Olivia made up for me." "Ethan, you need to grow up. You can't depend on a nanny forever." The boy felt anger rising in his chest. 7 years wasn't enough to fully understand what was happening, but it was enough to know something was wrong. Olivia hadn't done anything bad. She was kind, caring, always helped him with his homework, and never yelled at him, not even when he misbehaved. That afternoon, while Michael was at the office handling company business, Ethan had his second brilliant idea. He climbed onto the kitchen stool and reached for the landline phone on the wall. He dialed the number he'd memorized from hearing his father say it so often, the front desk of the office building where Michael worked. "Good afternoon, Thompson Construction, Jennifer speaking." "Hi, Jennifer. It's Ethan, Mr. Thompson's son." "Oh, Ethan, what a surprise. How are you?" "Jennifer, can you help me with something really important? I need Olivia's phone number. She was my nanny." Jennifer fell silent for a few seconds. She knew the situation because Michael had told her not to forward any calls from Olivia to him. "Ethan, sweetheart, I think you should talk to your dad about this. Please, Jennifer. It's really important. I just want to talk to her once." The receptionist felt her heart tighten. She herself had a son Ethan's age and knew how hard it was for a child to handle sudden separations. "Listen, Ethan, I can't give you her number, but I can give you some advice. If you really want to talk to Olivia, you'll have to be more creative. Your father won't like it if he finds out you've been talking." Ethan thanked her and hung up. Creative. That word echoed in his head for the rest of the day. That night, when Margaret went home and Michael locked himself in his office to work, Ethan had his third brilliant idea. He grabbed the flashlight he'd gotten last Christmas and went to his room. He opened the window facing the street and started signaling with the light. 1 long flash, 2 short ones, 3 long ones. He didn't know Morse code, but he made up his own system. 1 flash meant hi, 2 meant miss you, 3 meant come back. He did this for nearly an hour, hoping somehow Olivia might see and understand. He didn't know she lived nearby and that at that very moment she was returning from the hospital where she'd visited her mother. Olivia saw the flickering lights toward the Thompsons' house, but thought it was just an electrical issue. On Sunday, Ethan woke up determined to step up his efforts. At lunch, while Margaret reheated the food she'd prepared earlier, he asked, "Mrs. Margaret, do you know where Olivia lives?" The woman glanced around, making sure Michael wasn't listening. "I do, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" "I wanted to send her a letter." Margaret felt torn between loyalty to her employer and compassion for the child. She decided that if Ethan wrote a letter, she could at least try to deliver it. "All right, but it has to be a secret, okay? Your father can't know." Ethan spent the whole afternoon writing a letter in his childish handwriting, carefully choosing each word. "Dear Olivia, I don't understand why you left. Dad said you can't be my nanny anymore, but I want you to know you'll always be my friend. I draw you every day. Margaret said she'll take this letter to you. I wish I could see you just once to give you a hug and say thank you for everything. Love, Ethan. P.S. I found the paper birds in the garden. They're kept in a special box. Margaret took the letter to Olivia that evening. The young woman was helping her sister Emma with math homework when the neighbor knocked on the door. "Olivia, I have something for you." When she read the letter, Olivia cried so hard that Emma got worried. "Sis, what's wrong?" "It's Ethan, Emma. That little boy I used to take care of. He's hurting, and I can't do anything." "Why can't you take care of him anymore?" "Because his father fired me. I think he thought I was trying to replace Ethan's mom who passed away." Emma, though only 15, sometimes had a wisdom that surprised Olivia. "Sis, if you really love that boy, you can't just give up. You have to find a way to let him know you didn't abandon him." Olivia spent the night thinking about her sister's words. On Monday morning, she had an idea. She wrote a reply to Ethan and asked Margaret to deliver it. In the letter, she explained she hadn't left because she wanted to, but because sometimes adults make decisions that are hard to understand. She said she'd always be rooting for him, and that if he wanted, he could leave drawings or notes in the same spot in the garden where she'd left the origami. Ethan was overjoyed when he got the reply. Finally, he had a way to talk to Olivia. He started leaving drawings in the garden every day, pictures of them playing, the stories she'd told, the snacks they'd shared. Olivia responded with more origami and little notes of encouragement. This system worked for nearly 2 weeks, until Michael began to suspect something. He noticed Ethan was more cheerful than usual. The boy hummed during breakfast and did his homework without complaining. Besides, Margaret seemed nervous whenever he came home early. On Thursday of the second week, Michael decided to come home unexpectedly in the middle of the afternoon. He parked the car in the garage and quietly entered through the kitchen door. Margaret was washing dishes and didn't notice his presence. That's when he saw Ethan in the garden, kneeling near the bushes, hiding something under a rock. The boy looked around to make sure no one was watching and ran back inside. Michael waited for Ethan to go upstairs and went to investigate. Under the rock, he found a colorful drawing of the boy flying a kite with a curly-haired woman. On the drawing, Ethan had written, "Olivia, today I learned how to do division in school. You'd be proud of me." The businessman felt anger rise in his chest. Olivia was disobeying his orders and still communicating with Ethan. Worse yet, she was involving Margaret in the scheme. That night after dinner, Michael called Margaret for a private talk. "Margaret, do you know anything about Ethan and Olivia still communicating?" The woman lowered her eyes, knowing she couldn't lie. "Mr. Thompson, the boy was suffering so much. I just helped him deliver a little letter. Margaret, I was very clear with my instructions. Olivia is not to have any contact with Ethan. Period. But Mr. Thompson, with all due respect, the boy has been better since he started communicating with her again. He was so sad. He wasn't eating properly." "That's none of your concern, Margaret. You're here to take care of the house and Ethan, not to question my decisions. If I find out you're facilitating this communication, I'll have to find someone else to work here." Margaret felt her world crumble. She needed that job as much as Olivia needed what she had lost. With 3 grandchildren to help support and her husband unemployed, she couldn't risk losing her job. "All right, Mr. Thompson, it won't happen again." The next day, when Ethan tried to give Margaret another drawing to take to Olivia, she had to refuse. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Your father found out and forbade me from helping. If I do it again, I'll lose my job." Ethan felt his world crumble again. It was as if they were taking Olivia out of his life little by little, one stone at a time, until she disappeared completely. But Ethan was no ordinary boy. At 7 years old, he already showed a creativity and determination that surprised everyone. If he couldn't count on Margaret anymore, he'd have to find another way. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. At school, Ethan began observing how the other children communicated. He saw Jacob, an 8-year-old, teaching Morse code to his friends during recess. He saw Sophia using hand signals to communicate with her deaf sister, who studied in a special class. He saw Nathan creating secret drawings that only his closest friends could decipher. Ethan absorbed it all like a sponge. On Friday, he came home with his head buzzing with ideas. The first thing he did was observe the household routine with a detective's eye. Margaret arrived at 7 in the morning and left at 5 in the afternoon. Michael left at 8 and returned between 6 and 7 in the evening. Ethan got home from school at 4:30, giving him at least an hour alone in the house with Margaret, who now avoided any conversation about Olivia. But Ethan had noticed something even his own father might not have known: the routine of Robert, the gardener who came twice a week. Robert was a 60-year-old man who worked for several families in the gated community. He was quiet, discreet, and Ethan had always seen him as a living piece of garden furniture. On Tuesday, when Robert was trimming the rose bushes, Ethan approached him. "Mr. Robert, can I ask you something?" The man looked up from the plants and smiled. It was rare for the children in the house to talk to him. "Of course, son. What do you want to know?" "Do you know a woman named Olivia? She used to live nearby in Glendale." Robert scratched his graying beard, thoughtful. "Olivia? Olivia what?" "Olivia Williams. She was my nanny." "Oh, yes. I know the Williams family. I work for Mrs. Wilson, who lives on the same street. Good people." "Why do you ask?" Ethan glanced around, making sure Margaret wasn't listening. "Mr. Robert, can you keep a really important secret?" Robert chuckled softly. "Son, at my age, I've kept so many secrets that if I started telling them, I wouldn't finish by Christmas." Ethan told Robert the whole story: how his father had fired Olivia without explanation, how they had created a communication system through the garden, how Margaret had been forbidden to help. Robert listened quietly, nodding occasionally. "I see, son. You want me to take a message to this Olivia. Is that it?" "Exactly. Could you do that? Please." Robert looked at the 7-year-old boy with a paternal smile. He had raised 5 children himself and knew how kids could suffer when adults made decisions without explaining properly. "All right, son, but just this once, okay? And it has to be our secret." Ethan was so happy, he almost shouted with joy. He ran to his room and wrote a letter to Olivia, telling her he had found a new ally and that he wouldn't give up on staying in touch with her. Robert delivered the letter on Wednesday when he went to work at Mrs. Wilson's house. Olivia happened to be visiting the neighbor who was friends with her mother. When she read Ethan's letter, Olivia smiled for the first time in weeks. That boy wasn't going to give up easily. She wrote a warm reply and asked Robert to deliver it. This new system worked for a few more weeks. Ethan and Olivia exchanged letters twice a week, always through Robert. The boy wrote about school, the things he was learning, and how much he missed her. Olivia responded with words of encouragement and little made-up stories she knew Ethan loved. But Michael wasn't stupid. He had noticed Ethan was doing better again, humming in the mornings and doing his homework without complaint. Something was going on, and he was determined to find out what. He started observing the house more closely. He noticed Robert always seemed a little nervous when he arrived. He noticed Ethan got excited on Tuesdays and Fridays, exactly the days Robert worked in the garden. On the Thursday of the 3rd week, Michael came home early and hid in the office overlooking the garden. He saw Ethan approach Robert and discreetly hand him something. Robert tucked the paper into his shirt pocket and kept working as if nothing had happened. Michael waited until Robert finished his work and left the community. Then he called the management office and asked for the gardener's contact. "Robert, this is Michael Thompson from House 47. I need to speak with you urgently." "Of course, Mr. Thompson. Is something wrong with the plants?" "It's not about the plants, it's about the letters you've been delivering to a woman named Olivia Williams." On the other end of the line, Robert was silent for a few seconds. "Mr. Thompson, Robert, I'm not going to fire you, but I need you to stop doing this immediately. That's an order." "All right, sir. It won't happen again." Michael hung up the phone and went upstairs to talk to Ethan. He found the boy in his room doing his math homework. "Ethan, we need to talk." The boy looked up from his notebook and saw the serious expression on his father's face. "Yes, Dad?" "I know you've been sending letters to Olivia through Robert." Ethan felt his blood run cold. How had his father found out? "Dad, I just wanted..." "Ethan, how many times do I have to explain this? Olivia is no longer part of our lives. You need to accept that and move on." "But why, Dad? She didn't do anything wrong. She took good care of me, helped me with homework, played with me. Michael felt his patience slipping. Because I'm your father, and I make the decisions here. This discussion is over. Tears began streaming down Ethan's face. You can't stop me from loving her. You can't stop me from missing her. Yes, I can. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Ethan ran under the bed and pulled out the shoebox where he kept all of Olivia's letters and origami. He clutched it to his chest as if it were a treasure. You can't take these memories away from me, they're mine. Michael stepped closer and tried to take the box from his son's hands. Ethan, give me that box right now. No, they're mine! A tug of war broke out between father and son. Ethan cried and screamed, holding onto the box with all the strength his 7-year-old arms could muster. Michael pulled hard, determined to put an end to this once and for all. Then the box opened, and all the letters, drawings, and origami scattered across the bedroom floor. Ethan threw himself onto the ground, desperately gathering the papers as if they were pieces of his own heart. Michael stood there, watching his son in despair, and for the first time he wondered if he was being too harsh. But pride won out. He gathered all the papers into a pile and said, Ethan, I'm going to keep these things with me. When you're older, and understand that sometimes we have to say goodbye to people, I'll give them back. Dad, please don't take them away, please. Michael left the room with the papers in hand, ignoring his son's desperate cries. He went downstairs and locked everything in his office drawer. Ethan cried until he had no tears left. Margaret went up to comfort him, but the boy was inconsolable. He didn't eat dinner, didn't bathe, didn't brush his teeth. He just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling lonelier than ever. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He kept staring at the office drawer where he'd stored his son's treasures. For the first time in weeks, he began to question whether he was doing the right thing. He thought of Emily and how she always said Ethan was a special, sensitive child who needed lots of love and understanding. He remembered how she had insisted they hire a caring nanny, not just someone to watch the boy. But then he remembered the pain he'd felt hearing Olivia singing Emily's song. It was as if someone was trying to erase his wife's memory to replace her with someone else. The following days, Ethan was sunk in deep sadness. He didn't play, didn't smile, barely ate. At school, his teachers noticed the change in his behavior and called Michael. Mr. Thompson, Ethan has been very different this week. He isolates himself during recess, doesn't participate in activities, seems lost in his own world. Has something happened at home? Michael made up some excuse about adjusting to a new routine, but he knew the problem was more serious. Margaret was worried too. She tried to cheer Ethan up with games, stories, and different activities, but the boy seemed to have lost interest in everything. Mr. Michael, with all due respect, the boy needs help. He hasn't been the same since you forbade him from seeing Olivia, said Margaret. Margaret, we've talked about this. Ethan will get used to it. But what if he doesn't? What if he gets sick from sadness? Michael didn't answer, but Margaret's words echoed in his head for the rest of the day. That Friday, Ethan had his fourth brilliant idea. If he couldn't communicate with Olivia through people, maybe he could find another way. During recess at school, he carefully observed how the internet signal worked. He noticed some boys sent messages to their older brothers through social media apps their parents didn't know about. He saw how Sophia communicated with her deaf sister, using signs only they understood. Ethan began crafting a more sophisticated plan. If Olivia walked past their street and looked up at his bedroom window, he could send her signals. Not with a flashlight. His father was watching everything now, but with other things. Saturday morning, Ethan woke up determined. He waited for his father to leave for his usual tennis game at the club, then put his plan into action. He took a large sheet of brown paper left over from a school project and wrote a message in big block letters. Olivia, I'm here. He taped the paper to his bedroom window from the inside so anyone passing by could see it. Then he grabbed colorful clothes from his closet and hung them outside the window, creating an improvised clothesline. Each color stood for a word in the code he'd invented. Red meant miss you, blue meant happy, yellow meant wait, and green meant love. Ethan spent the whole morning rearranging the clothes, creating different color combinations, hoping Olivia would walk by and understand. Margaret noticed the strange activity but pretended not to see. Deep down, she hoped the boy would find a way to reach Olivia. And the miracle happened. Around 2 in the afternoon, Olivia was returning from the pharmacy where she'd bought her mother's medicine when she decided to take a detour through the neighborhood where she used to work. She wasn't sure why, maybe just nostalgia, but she wanted to see the house where she'd been so happy taking care of Ethan. As she passed the gate, she instinctively looked up at the boy's bedroom window. That's when she saw the paper taped to the glass and the colorful clothes hanging outside. Olivia stopped on the sidewalk and read the message. Her heart raced. For Ethan was there, trying to reach her in a desperate, creative way. She glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then waved discreetly at the window. Ethan saw her and was so overwhelmed he almost shouted with joy. Olivia pointed to herself, then to the street corner, signaling she'd wait there. Ethan understood and immediately started thinking of a way to leave the house without Margaret noticing. That's when he had his 5th brilliant idea. He ran downstairs and said, "Mrs. Margaret, I'm going to play in the backyard, okay?" "All right, sweetheart, but don't leave the yard, understand?" Ethan slipped out the back door and ran around the entire block faster than he'd ever run in his life. He reached the corner breathless and sweaty, his heart pounding with happiness. Olivia was there, waiting with tears in her eyes. "Ethan, my boy!" They hugged right there on the corner, not caring who might see. Ethan cried so hard he soaked Olivia's shirt. "Olivia, I knew you'd come back. I knew it." "Ethan, my love, how are you? Is everything okay?" "It is now. Dad hid all your letters, but I remember every single one by heart." Olivia felt her heart tighten. "Ethan, you can't stay here too long. Your father will be worried if he finds out you left the house." "I know, but I needed to see you. I needed to give you a hug and tell you I haven't forgotten you for a single day." "I haven't forgotten you either, Ethan. You're the most special boy in the world." They talked for a few more minutes, exchanging kisses on the cheek and more hugs. Olivia promised she'd try to find a way for them to see each other now and then, even if it had to be in secret. Ethan went back home the same way, slipping in through the back door and pretending he'd spent the whole time playing in the yard. Margaret found it odd that the boy was suddenly so cheerful, but she didn't ask any questions. That evening, when Michael returned from the club, he noticed Ethan seemed different. Happier, more talkative, even humming during dinner. "Ethan, are you okay?" "Yes, Dad, why?" "You seem more upbeat today." Ethan shrugged, trying to play it cool. "I just played a lot in the yard today. It was fun." Michael didn't suspect a thing, but he was glad to see his son happier. In the following days, Ethan and Olivia developed a more elaborate communication system. She would walk past the neighborhood street at the same time every Tuesday and Friday at 2 in the afternoon, when Ethan was already home but Michael was still at work. Ethan created codes using objects in the window. A stuffed bear meant he was okay. A book meant he missed her. A ball meant he wanted to play with her. Olivia responded with subtle gestures. A heart made with her hands meant she missed him too. 2 hands pressed together meant she was praying for him, and a simple wave meant everything was fine. This system worked for almost a month. Ethan became his cheerful self again, and Michael started to believe his son had finally moved past his difficult phase. But secrets have a way of coming out, especially when children are involved. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. It was on a rainy Tuesday that everything changed. Michael had left for an important meeting with investors, but the meeting was cancelled last minute due to the storm over Los Angeles. He decided to head home early to catch up on some paperwork in his office. When he parked the car in the garage, he saw something that left him stunned. Ethan was at his bedroom window, gesturing excitedly to someone on the street. Michael rushed out of the garage and looked in the direction his son was signaling. There was Olivia, standing under a tree, waving at Ethan and making hand signs. Michael felt a rage he hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just anger at the disobedience, it was anger at being deceived, betrayed by his own employees and even his own son. Olivia saw Michael stepping out of the car and her first instinct was to run. But something made her stop. Maybe it was the rain soaking her clothes, maybe the exhaustion of weeks of hiding, or maybe just the certainty that she wasn't doing anything wrong. She stood there, staring at Michael as he approached with firm steps. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" "Mr. Thompson, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been disobeying me for weeks? That you've been using my own son to deceive me?" Ethan saw the argument from the window and rushed down the stairs. He reached the street, drenched and panting. "Dad, don't fight with her, please." "Ethan, go back inside right now." "No, I won't let you fight with Olivia." The boy stepped between his father and Olivia, spreading his arms as if to shield her from danger. Michael looked at the scene before him and felt a mix of pride and indignation. Pride because his son was showing courage and loyalty. Indignation because that loyalty was being directed at someone who, in his eyes, was disrupting the family's life. "Ethan, this conversation is between adults. Go inside the house." "Dad, you don't understand. Olivia is important to me." "Ethan, you're 7 years old. You don't know what's important or not." Olivia saw the situation spiraling out of control and decided to step in. "Mr. Thompson, may I speak with you for a minute? Alone?" Michael looked at her with suspicion but nodded. "Ethan, go inside now." The boy looked at Olivia with fear in his eyes. "Olivia, are you leaving again?" "I don't know, Ethan, but I promise no matter what happens, you'll always be special to me." Ethan gave Olivia a tight hug and ran inside the house, crying. Michael and Olivia stood there in the rain, staring at each other for a few seconds before she gathered the courage to speak. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your anger, but you need to understand that I'm not doing this to hurt you or your family." "Then why are you doing it? Why can't you just accept that you're no longer part of our lives?" Olivia took a deep breath before answering. "Because Ethan isn't just a job to me, Mr. Thompson. He's become part of my family. And when someone becomes family, you don't just disappear from their life. Olivia, Ethan already has a family. He has me." "Yes, he does. But that doesn't mean he can't have other people who love him too." Michael felt the conversation slipping from his grasp. "Olivia, you don't understand. Ethan is getting too attached to you. That's not healthy for a child." "Mr. Thompson, may I ask you something? Why did you really fire me?" The question caught Michael off guard. He stayed silent for a few seconds, searching for an answer that wouldn't reveal his vulnerability. Because I thought we didn't need a nanny anymore." "That's not true. You fired me because I was singing the song your wife used to sing to Ethan." Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. How did she know? "Olivia, that's none of your business." "Yes, it is, Mr. Thompson. Because if that's why I'm being kept away from Ethan, then you need to understand one thing. I never ever tried to replace his mother. I just wanted to give him the affection every child deserves." "But you were singing her song." Michael's voice came out louder than he intended, revealing a pain he'd been hiding for months. "Mr. Thompson, Ethan taught me that song. He said his mother used to sing it to him and that he missed her. I sang it because I wanted him to remember her with love, not sadness." Michael felt Olivia's words echo in his head. Had he misunderstood everything? "Olivia, you don't know what it's like to lose the person you love and then see someone else trying to take their place." "I do know, Mr. Thompson. I've also lost someone I loved." Michael looked at her in surprise. "My fiancé died in a motorcycle accident 3 years ago. I know the pain of loss, and I also know that love doesn't shrink when it's shared. It only grows." They stood in silence for a few minutes, listening only to the sound of rain hitting the pavement. "Mr. Thompson, do you want Ethan to forget his mother?" "Of course not. I want him to remember her always." "Then why are you trying to erase the good memories?" "Ethan told me you stopped listening to the music she liked, stopped making the dishes she used to make, stopped talking about her. That's not helping Ethan remember his mother. That's helping him forget." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "Was I really doing everything wrong?" "Olivia, I don't know how to handle this. It's very hard for me." "I understand, Mr. Thompson. But Ethan shouldn't have to pay the price for your pain. He needs love, affection, people who care about him. That won't make him forget his mother. It'll make him feel loved enough to honor her memory." Michael looked at the house and saw Ethan at the window, watching their conversation with eyes swollen from crying. Olivia, even if I understand your reasons, I can't let you keep talking to Ethan behind my back. That's teaching him to lie. You're right. I shouldn't have done that, but you should have talked to me before firing me. You should have explained your reasons. When you cut off a child's contact with someone they love without explanation, it causes trauma that can last a lifetime. Michael felt Olivia was right, but he wasn't ready to admit it. Olivia, even so, I think it's better if you don't see Ethan anymore, for his own good. Mr. Thompson, can I make a suggestion? What suggestion? Give me a chance to say goodbye properly. An honest talk where I explain that I'm leaving, but it doesn't mean I don't care about him anymore. Children need closure, Mr. Thompson. They need to understand why things happen. Michael looked back at Ethan in the window. The boy was pressed against the glass, trying to read their lips. Fine, one talk, supervised by me, and then it's over. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. They walked into the house together, soaked from the rain. Ethan ran down the stairs and threw himself into Olivia's arms. Olivia, you're not leaving again? Michael and Olivia exchanged a glance, and she gestured subtly for him to let her explain. Ethan, I need to talk to you about something very important. Can we sit in the living room? The three of them sat on the couch. Ethan clung to Olivia's side as if afraid she'd disappear again. Ethan, you know sometimes in life people have to say goodbye, right? Yeah, like when Mommy went to heaven. Exactly. And sometimes people say goodbye even when they're alive, because life changes and takes them on different paths. Ethan's heart tightened. Are you leaving again? I am, Ethan. But this time I'll explain why, so you understand. Olivia glanced at Michael, who nodded, giving her permission to continue. Ethan, when I took care of you, I was so happy. You became very special to me, but your dad felt it might be better for you to have other people caring for you now that you're growing up. But I don't want other people, I want you. I know, sweetheart, and you became very special to me too. But sometimes, adults make decisions kids don't fully understand, but they think it's for the best. Daddy, please let Olivia stay. Michael's chest ached seeing his son's desperation, but he stayed firm. Ethan, the decision's already made. Olivia pulled the boy closer and looked into his eyes. Ethan, listen to something very important. Just because I'm leaving doesn't mean I stopped caring about you. The love I have for you will always be here. She pointed to her heart. And here, she pointed to his. But I won't get to see you anymore. Not in person. But every time you do something kind, every time you help someone in need, I'll be there with you. How? Because all the good things you've learned will stay with you forever. And a part of me will always be in you because of that. Ethan cried, but he seemed to understand better than Michael had expected. Olivia, are you going to be happy? I will, Ethan, and you will be too. Your father loves you very much, and I'm sure you'll find a way to be happy together. Can I give you a goodbye present? Of course. Ethan ran to his room and came back with a drawing he had made that morning. It was a picture of the two of them playing in the park with a big yellow sun shining in the sky. So you don't forget the good times we had together. Olivia looked at the drawing and couldn't hold back her tears. Ethan, I'll never forget. Never, never, never. They hugged tightly, and this time it was a real goodbye hug. Ethan cried, but it was a different kind of cry. It was the cry of someone who was beginning to understand that sometimes life hurts, but love remains even when people part ways. Michael watched the whole scene and felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't jealousy or anger, it was admiration. Admiration for the mature way Olivia had handled the situation and for the brave way Ethan was facing the goodbye. Olivia stood up and turned to Michael. Mr. Thompson, thank you for giving me this chance to say goodbye properly. It means a lot to me. Olivia, thank you for taking such good care of Ethan while you were here. It was the first time Michael had acknowledged Olivia's efforts, and she was moved. It was my pleasure, Mr. Thompson. Ethan is a very special boy. I know, and maybe I've been too harsh in some situations. Olivia understood that this was as close to an apology as she would get from Michael at that moment. Mr. Thompson, Can I ask one last favor? What is it? Let Ethan talk about me sometimes. Let him keep the good memories. And most importantly, let him talk about his mother. Children need to process their feelings, not hide them. Michael nodded, still unsure of what to say. Olivia said goodbye to Ethan with one more hug and left the house, walking slowly. Ethan stood at the window, waving until she disappeared around the corner. That night, for the first time in weeks, Ethan managed to eat properly. He was sad, but it was a different kind of sadness. A sadness not mixed with anger or confusion. Michael tried to talk to his son during dinner. "Ethan, are you okay?" "I'm sad, Dad." But Olivia explained everything clearly. "I understand." "Understand what?" "That sometimes people leave, but the love stays, like with Mom." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "Yeah, Ethan, the love always stays. Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you get sad when Olivia sang Mom's song?" The question caught Michael off guard. He hadn't expected Ethan to notice. Because I missed Mom. I miss her too. But when Olivia sang, I remembered Mom in a happy way, not a sad one." Michael looked at his son and realized that at 7 years old, Ethan sometimes had a wisdom he himself lacked. "Ethan, I'm sorry if I made you suffer because of my sadness." "It's okay, Dad. But can you promise me something?" "What?" "That you'll try to be happy again. Mom wouldn't want to see you sad forever." That night, Michael stayed up late thinking about his son's and Olivia's words. For the first time since Emily left, he wondered if he had been using his grief as an excuse to withdraw from life and the people who could bring joy to him and Ethan. The following days were different in the Thompson household. Ethan was still sad, but it was a quiet sadness. He no longer threw tantrums, refused to eat, or isolated himself. He simply seemed more mature, as if he had learned an important lesson about life. Michael was different too. He started paying more attention to his son, talking more during meals, asking about school and friends. A week after Olivia's farewell, something happened that changed everything. Ethan was playing in the backyard when he saw Margaret crying in the kitchen. She was trying to hide it, but the tears were visible. "Mrs. Margaret, why are you crying?" Margaret quickly wiped her eyes. "It's nothing, sweetheart. I'm just a little tired." Ethan walked over and hugged her leg. "Do you miss someone?" "Just a little, yes." "Who?" Margaret hesitated before answering. "My son. He's not with us anymore." Ethan immediately understood what that meant. "Did he go to heaven like Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart." Ethan hugged Margaret tighter and said something that made her cry even more. "Then you know how I feel, and you know how Daddy feels too." At that moment, Michael appeared in the kitchen and saw the scene. Ethan comforting Margaret, the two of them hugging and crying together. Did something happen? Ethan turned to his father with red eyes. "Dad, Mrs. Margaret also lost someone she loved, like us." Michael looked at Margaret and felt a connection he had never noticed before. Everyone in that house had lost someone important. Everyone was trying to find a way to move forward with the pain. "Margaret, you never told me about your son." "Mr. Michael, I didn't want to bother you with my problems." "It's no bother. In fact, I think all of us here understand what it's like to miss someone." That afternoon, the three of them sat in the living room and talked about loss, longing, and how hard it is to keep going. Ethan joined the conversation as if he were an adult, asking questions and sharing thoughts that surprised Michael. It was during that talk that Michael realized something that completely changed his perspective. Ethan had matured a lot in the past few weeks. The way he handled Olivia's goodbye, the way he comforted Margaret, the way he expressed his feelings, all of it showed the boy was growing into an empathetic and sensitive person. And Michael realized that much of this growth had happened because of Olivia, because of the love she had given the boy, because of the lessons she had taught, because of the way she had handled their farewell. That night, Michael made a decision that would change everything.